Hello, welcome to I Love College podcast. This is Nidal, Wadi hosting here. This is a new podcast we're producing through Lone Star College Montgomery campus, the arts department. I personally am very excited to get right into it. So basically, I'll give you a breakdown of the show. We're going to be doing interviews here with people from our communities, from the school, anyone who has gone through or is going through the higher education process post grade school, K through 12. So this week we're going to be starting by interviewing Professor Emmy Levine here at Lone Star College. How are you doing today, Emmy?
Hello, I'm doing very well. How are you?
Not too bad, I guess. As good as anybody can really be these days.
In the apocalypse, yep.
Yes, the end times. I try not to focus too much on the negativity. I'd like for this podcast to be a place of positive feelings. But I'll go ahead and start off with a little icebreaker. On a scale from 1 to 10, Emmy, how would you say you're feeling? 1 being, please, I'm drowning. Please, there's no hope left. And 10 being, I'm on top of the world.
I would say I'm about a 5 these days.
5, that's good. That's
average. It's average, yes.
Yeah.
It's been tough, being in the performing arts. I'm a director and I teach theater here at Lone Star College Montgomery. And as you know, we were in the thick of Mamma Mia.
It sure was thick.
Yes, and we were having so much fun, and it was going to be a really spectacular show. And then of course COVID hits, and all of a sudden we're all stuck inside, and no longer seeing each other 14 hours a day like we were before.
It was a very difficult adjustment for me personally, going into, oh wow, all these new people and I get to make new friends and we get to do new cool stuff, and then oh no, it's all gone.
Yep.
That was very tough. But how long has it been? 6 months
About
later?
6 months.
We're back.
Yep.
We're in the studio. And it is very exciting to have you here.
Thank you. Today is my official first real day back on campus. So,
really?
Yes.
Well, same here.
Yes.
I thought it was very interesting. We have a dense check-in process now here on campus, which I very much appreciate. Did you see the little temperature drone?
Yeah.
So I'm about 6 foot tall. I walked up to the spot where it says stand here, and it was like, please stand close enough so we could take your temperature. And I was like, okay, cool. So I walked up to it, and it was like, we can't see you. And I was like, do I have to like squat? Do I have to step further away? And it eventually worked. So
I think that they were designed for people who are like 5 feet tall.
I know. I was like, I walked up to it and I was like, am I supposed to stand right here? Are you sure?
I'm only 5'6", and I was still having to crouch down to try to meet the face, outline.
But it is very cool, and it's necessary to make sure that we stay as safe as possible here on campus.
Yes.
I, for one, am very excited to be back on campus, and I guess we'll go ahead and get right into the questions. Would you like to go ahead and give us a little background on your experience, particularly with college and school post graduation from high school?
Sure. So I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, back on the East Coast, and I loved theater all throughout my life. I first got into theater when I was 6 years old. Before I could even read, I was doing improv and whatnot. Discovered in about high school that I was really interested in directing. So my high school was very nice. They gave me a couple directing opportunities, which was great. So then I got to apply to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts for directing, and I got in, which was very exciting.
That's a big one.
Yeah, so I moved to New York at the age of 18. I didn't find very scary at the time, but looking back on it, I was like, wow, that's
all by yourself,
brave.
or did
Yes.
you have any friends? Or
Nope, no friends,
Wow.
just no family, just moved into the dorm my freshman year. NYU, it's a big school in a big city, and it is easy to get lost in there. I was an RA, a resident assistant in college, and I definitely saw some freshmen who came from, the middle of nowhere.
Wow,
who,
and they had a bit of a Macaulay Culkin,
Yes.
Home Alone 2 expression on their face.
Exactly. But I really found, while I did theater, and of course, as you know, when you do theater, you spend like 14 hours a day with everyone, and our classes ran from 8 in the morning until 6 p.m. at night, and then we had rehearsals, or later. We had rehearsals till midnight. It's a lot of time together. But I really found one of the benefits to my college experience was getting outside of the theater people.
branching out.
Exactly. I couldn't let theater just be my entire life. So I joined the admissions office. I worked as a admissions ambassador, as a tour guide in
Oh,
the
very
NYU's
nice.
admissions office. So I was one of those nerds walking backwards around the streets of New York with a large group. And I also was an RA, like I said. So those were two really nice built-in other communities with non-theater people where I could really make friends and branch outside of just the theater world. So that was a lot of fun.
Right. Would you say that making new relationships and meeting new people was one of the more valuable experiences of your college times?
Tremendously. One of the nice things about going to NYU specifically too is that people were there from all over the world. So I truly, I got to branch outside of my little Baltimore, Maryland bubble and really get to meet some really interesting people with very different backgrounds and perspectives than I had. So I thought that was one of the most valuable parts of college, period.
That's incredible. Yes, I absolutely agree. This is my second year at Lone Star College, and it is just a community college, as people would refer to it, but I would say branching out and meeting new people is an extremely valuable experience for anybody, no matter what point in your life you are in. So after NYU Tisch School, where did you go?
So then I lived in New York. So I was there for 4 years, graduated. Then I continued to live in New York and work in New York for 6 years after that.
Excellent. You didn't jump ship?
Did not, no.
Have to stay where the opportunities are at.
Exactly. That's the bottom line. As a theater director, that's where most of the opportunities are in the country right now is in New York. Well, right now. There's not anywhere.
Yes. Most of the opportunities are online right now.
Correct. But so I lived in New York for 6 years. I, took a little while to find my place in the theater community after graduation. I ended up, one of the big perks about getting your bachelor's degree, no matter what it's in, and I'll tell you, I have a BFA in drama. But you know what? When you write a resume and are applying for day jobs after graduation, you don't have to write what you majored in. Like, nobody cares what you majored in.
You're like, look, I got a degree.
Exactly.
This is all you need to know.
Right. So I would
just
I would say I have a bachelor's degree from NYU. So, and that sounds great,
and
right?
they're like, please come stock groceries at Kroger. Come on.
Well,
right away.
or please come be this financial planning assistant, which is what I ended up doing for about a year after college. I was working for a financial planner. As his assistant. And you know what? It was actually, it was horrible. I hated every moment of it. But it was incredibly helpful because one of the things that I felt like I didn't learn in college was about budgeting and taxes and how to, especially as an artist, because there are so many write-offs for your taxes that you can use as a working artist that I had no idea about. But you have to save your receipts and you have to keep a spreadsheet and all that stuff. So having that job, while not directly related to my field, was actually incredibly helpful for my future adult life. So
yes, all those adult skills
exactly
that you never get hands-on experience with until you have to actually do it.
Exactly. And I do feel like that's something lacking in four-year education still right now, is that there isn't those kind of practical classes of like, great, we're having all these great lofty philosophical conversations, but then when you graduate, great, you can think philosophical things now, but like, can you manage your finances and make a budget and figure out, how much you should spend in groceries every week.
Right. My third eye is open, but is it going to help me do my taxes?
Correct. Exactly. So that was really crucial and very helpful. But then after about a year, I got a job working as James Lapine's assistant director on Broadway.
Yes, James Lapine. I remember going to, I guess, a seminar or a speech that you were delivering last year in the spring of 2019, I guess. Or no, fall of 2019. Yes. And you talked about your time with James Lapine, who's a very accomplished Broadway personality.
Yes.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So James Lapine, he is a director and a playwright, actually. He got his start back in the 80s working with Stephen Sondheim, and they wrote together some very famous shows like Into the Woods, Sunday in the Park with George, which James Lapine won the Pulitzer Prize for drama for, which is very rare for a musical to win the Pulitzer Prize in drama. Passion, several other big-time musicals. So that's really how his career took off. He won a bunch of Tony Awards, the Pulitzer Prize, obviously, and has just been an incredible working director, filmmaker too. He's also has experience in film. If you ever know the 80s movie Life with Mikey, starring Michael J. Fox.
I actually didn't know that. Michael J. Fox.
Sorry, Michael J. Fox.
Wow.
Yep, exactly. He directed that. So he had a really vast experience and vast talents, which was pretty cool to work with.
So how did you branch into working with him? What was the introduction there?
So that's a pretty funny story. So I did have one family member living in New York City at the time. And these family members were pretty distantly related to me. It was my mom's stepsister, who their parents got married after they moved out of the house. They didn't ever grow up together. Mm-hmm. And her husband, who lived in New York. Her husband was born in China, grew up in Chinatown, New York, and is a very accomplished acupuncturist in New York City now.
Wow.
So one day we were, having dinner after I graduated college. I was lamenting about my job working with the financial planner. And my uncle goes, Emmy, I have a lot of patients who are Broadway stars. Would you like me to start giving them your resume?
Wow.
I was like, sure.
Yeah, just hand them on out, just right whenever they walk in.
Right, so he'd be sticking needles in these people, being like, oh, you should hire my niece. You should hire my niece.
Or I'll paralyze you
right,
forever.
Or something, right? I mean, honestly, I have to say, as an adult now, if my acupuncturist was harassing me to give their niece a job, I probably would pick a different acupuncturist. Right. But
well, it was great. I feel amazing, but it was very uncomfortable socially.
Right, exactly. So luckily for James Lapine is incredibly dedicated to helping the next generation of theater artists come up in the world, which is wonderful. It's not, you don't see it all that often with the current guard of theater professionals.
Mm-hmm. The current gatekeeping environment.
Exactly. So after about a year of my uncle pestering him, James Lapine finally said, you know what, I'll have dinner with her, let me meet Emmy, and we'll see how that goes. So we have dinner with my uncle and my aunt and James and his family. It goes pretty well. I don't hear anything for 6 months. I figure, okay, well, it was nice to meet him. Mm-hmm. Obviously, nothing's going to come of this.
Wow,
but
6 months. That's
exactly.
a long time to sit on that.
It was. I was at the Bronx Zoo one afternoon, just trying to kill some time. And I get a call from James Lapine all of a sudden, just out of the blue. And he says, hey, Emmy, last year, or 5 years ago, it wasn't even last year, 5 years ago, I rented a bunch of tables and chairs for Thanksgiving from this event rental company in Westchester, New York. But I can't remember the name of the company. Can you find out who I rented it from?
What? Out of the blue?
Out of the blue. And then he says, oh, and I'm about to go into a casting meeting. If you could have the answer in an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours by the time that I get out, that would be great.
Just out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
This is like Devil Wears Prada, who's
Correct.
putting you through some kind of test.
It was. And this is 2009, so we had cell phones, but they weren't smartphones yet. So I couldn't start researching on my phone about, event companies in Westchester to call.
You didn't just have access to all of the world's information.
Exactly. So instead, I had to hop on a subway. So the Bronx, I lived at the very bottom of Manhattan at the time. And the Bronx Zoo is all the way above Manhattan and then into the Bronx. Mm-hmm. So it was a good hour and a half train ride back to my apartment, and I only had 2 hours to.
Now you only have 30 minutes.
Exactly. So I call my mom from the train. And I'm like, "Are you near a computer? Can you research this for me?
Please tell me."
She got started on it, but she didn't have any luck. So I run into my apartment. I'm quickly Googling and calling. I think the third place I called, they were like, "Oh yeah, Mr. Lapine rented from us. We have the details right here." I'm like, oh, thank God.
They pick up and they're like, Emmy? Oh, we've been expecting you. You really pulled through, sweetheart.
You passed. Exactly. So James calls shortly thereafter. He says, do you have the answer? I say, I do. I give him the info. He says, okay, great, thanks. I don't hear from him again for a couple of weeks. Then I get a call, and he is working on a new musical called Sondheim on Sondheim that was going to be making its Broadway premiere the following year. Mm-hmm. And he was like, it's a kind of a documentary style musical. It was about Stephen Sondheim's life and work. Mm-hmm. So it had lots of a major multimedia element to it. So there was lots of TVs on the set, and the TVs would display pictures and videos from Stephen Sondheim's life and work. So he was like, we're having trouble keeping it all organized, all the pictures, all the videos organized. Can you create a spreadsheet that helps us keep track of everything? Mm-hmm. I was like, absolutely. I know nothing about spreadsheets or how to do any of that kind of stuff. But you think until you make it, right? I watched a bunch of YouTube videos.
You're like, absolutely. And by the way, do you need any tables and chairs? Because I got that. That's covered. I can get you tables and chairs. Okay, but the projection thing, I'm on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I, figured out how to use Excel and made him this nice tracking chart of his materials. Guess he liked it, so he threw me some more work on the project. Turned into more work. Then awkwardly, he ended up firing his assistant director at the time and hiring me. So I got to be the assistant director on the Broadway premiere of Sondheim on Sondheim, which was pretty exciting.
Wow, that is an amazing opportunity.
It was.
And it all started with tables and chairs.
Or acupuncture even before that. But yes, exactly.
Needles, and then tables and chairs, and then success.
Yep.
That's the key.
Something like that.
Well, that is excellent. So how long did you work with him on Sondheim on Sondheim?
Sondheim on Sondheim we worked on for about a year. It ran for about 8 months. It was intentionally supposed to be a limited run. It was very well received. It did well. And then he, took off on the next project, as you do as a freelance director. He was turning, I don't know if you're familiar with the film from I think it came out in 2003. It's called Little Miss Sunshine.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, you definitely should check it out. It won, I think, the Oscar award that year for Best Picture. It's really cute. It's very fun. It's dark. And the producers of the film had approached James Lapine and then also William Finn, who's another composer lyricist, about adapting the film into a Broadway musical. So that process, it takes a lot longer than you would think.
Right. Well, I'm picturing it takes years, maybe.
Correct. So it took us about 5 years in the process of creating that show. And that included doing workshops in New York City, we did them all over the country. We did an out-of-town tryout of the show in San Diego. And then ultimately it went to off-Broadway, where it had its final run. What frustrated me about that process was that we had producers on that show who I guess thought that they knew better than James Lapine and William Finn, which just to me is ridiculous to hear, given that they are obviously quite experts in
right.
the field.
Well, in any field,
yes.
To come in and say, well, I don't know, Mr. Spielberg. I'm not sure if you really know how to make a movie, basically.
Exactly. And the way the producers sort of work in Broadway is that they'll hold their money over the heads of the creatives, right?
Right.
So they'll say, if you don't make these changes, like we don't like this one song, or we don't like this actor, or whatever that you've chosen, you don't have to make the changes if you don't want to, but if you don't make the changes, then my money is gone.
The almighty dollar.
Exactly. So I felt like by the end of the 5 years, we actually had a worse product than when we started.
Oh, no.
Which was really frustrating. And then as a result, we didn't get great reviews off Broadway, and we never made it to Broadway. And that was many, many years for lots of actors, designers, me and James, obviously, and Bill Finn, that we devoted into it. It was pretty frustrating.
It's a shame. I can imagine. Yeah. I putting that much effort into a project for it to not come to fruition. Wow.
Yeah. And it happens way more often than anyone hears about or knows. It's a lot. It happens a lot in Broadway.
It's like raising a child for a certain number of years, and then someone coming to your door and saying, you know what, you haven't been doing a good enough job, so you're gonna have to try again with another kid.
Exactly.
Wow.
So from there, I worked on a whole bunch of other projects with him, over the years. And had a really great time, and he's a wonderful human being and a great director and a great writer. But eventually I got to the point where I was like what I described with this producerial model for Broadway. I was kind of fed up with it. I was like, man, if James Lapine can't make the art that he wants to make on Broadway, who can?
What hope is there for newcomers in the industry?
Exactly. So I thought, I want to go back to grad school, get my MFA, my Master of Fine Arts. And
your Masters of Financial Assisting.
Exactly. I already gotten that. And then be able to either work regionally, where I feel like you have a little bit more creative control over your work, or also teach. I was interested in potentially teaching. So then I applied to and went to Penn State School of Theater in central Pennsylvania for grad school, and got my MFA in directing there.
That's awesome. And that led you to being a teacher here.
That's right. One of the nice things about getting your MFA that a lot of people don't know about is a lot of schools are set up so that the grad students don't actually pay any tuition. Because I mean, when I was thinking about grad school, I was like, oh my God, do I want to take on $200,000 of student loans?
How will I possibly be able to afford that?
Right, and just to walk out with an MFA, which is not going to make me $200,000 a year. So what they do is your tuition is free, as long as you serve as like a TA or a grad assistant on some classes, so you do some teaching.
Okay, it's a bit of a work study.
It is, exactly. In fact, we got a small stipend as well. So not only was school free, they actually paid us to go to school, which is pretty great.
Wow, yeah, that has an amazing opportunity to come across.
And you know what? I'm telling you, there's most of the grad schools are that way. Some still require some money, but many grad programs are tuition free if you work for the school. So that was great. That was really helpful in terms of going through the program. Anyway, so during that time, I got to experience some teaching, try out teaching. My teaching definitely goes way back in my family. My grandfather was a professor of sociology. My dad is a lawyer, or he's recently retired. He was a lawyer, and he taught, he was an adjunct at various law schools around Baltimore. So teaching is very much in my bones, I think, as a result.
In your DNA.
In my DNA, that I fought it for a long time.
Yes.
My dad was like, you should just be a professor. You should just be a teacher. And I'm like, no, Dad, I don't want to do that.
This is not my path. I get to choose my own path.
Right. Which is why I gave my younger sister the advice recently. Just do what Dad tells you. Like, it just saves you a lot of time and fighting.
He knows this a lot better than you might think.
Exactly. So I kind of didn't want to like teaching, but I fell in love with it so fast. It was just so rewarding to see students over the course of just a few years grow and change and develop into, both as young adults and then also as performers or designers or technicians.
Well, I feel it's a very, to this day, even with all of the increases in credit that instructors have gotten in my lifetime that I've seen, it's still such an underrated profession.
Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't be sitting here flapping my gums into a microphone if it weren't for yourself giving me such an awesome opportunity here at college.
Yep, that's why we do it. Absolutely.
So I'm definitely appreciative that you went down that field so that we could cross paths.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. So, got to teach in grad school, really enjoyed it, found I really loved it. After grad school, I applied to 50 jobs.
Wow.
50.
50 nifty.
Yep. About half of them were professional theater jobs at regional theaters. About half were teaching gigs. Lone Star was the only one who offered me a job. So I was like, all right, Texas, here we go.
Excellent.
And so I became a professor here. Absolutely love Lone Star Montgomery. Was so pleasantly surprised to find how much I love the school and how much I love the students, how much I love my colleagues, the area, the Woodlands, Houston,
Yes.
Texas in general. I've become a total Texas lover.
This was your introduction to Texas
Correct.
as a state. Wow. I enjoy the opportunity to speak to someone who has lived outside of what I perceive to be the bubble of Texas.
Yes. Yeah, I made a lot of jokes with my friends, my East Coast friends, when I was first moving here. That, truly, I had lots of stereotypes in my head of like what I thought my Texas students were going to be.
I'm gonna have to sell my car and get a horse.
Right, seriously.
How do I take care of a horse?
Yes, I thought that like you guys were all going to come on horses to school every day, wearing cowboy hats and cowboy boots, and that you need like a spittoon in the classroom.
Howdy. What's a theater?
Exactly.
What is a theater art?
That's
is it
what I thought.
painting? Do you paint with a theater? Is it a kind of brush?
Right. Exactly. So I was obviously very pleasantly surprised to find that, oh gosh, any big city in America is just like any other big city in
civilization. They have it here too.
Exactly.
I'm glad we do.
Me too.
Well, to an extent.
Yes. No, but Houston in general too, I've really come to love. There's so much, arts happening in the city, culturally. The bars and restaurants are incredible. We've, obviously pre-COVID.
Yes, yeah.
But we've really enjoyed our time here for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is awesome. I'm definitely personally glad that you came down here and enjoyed your experience here.
Yes.
So it seems like you made a lot of valuable connections right out of college. Would you say that any of those are lasting today? Do you still have ties to James Lapine?
I do, yes, absolutely. No, we're definitely still friends and exchange calls or emails every year or so. Yes, it's really important in the performing arts that you maintain your connections.
Yes.
And Facebook honestly makes it easier. Social media makes it easier than before in the 90s and whatnot. To stay in touch with people, because you never know when your connections are gonna be fortunate, work out in your favor in the future. Because it's like truly like you can meet someone and then like 3 years later you think of, oh, that person would be great for this gig or this role or whatever. So
you get back in touch and then you give them some work. And I would say using people somewhat has a negative connotation, but we all are experiencing a collective journey, I would feel. And everybody has something to gain from someone else's perspective or experiences.
Exactly. Agreed.
Well, that is awesome. To anyone who's particularly going into the field that you've been through at this point, would you have any valuable words of wisdom or sage advice to offer?
Absolutely. In terms of artists, no matter what you're doing in the arts, whether you're a technician, whether you're an actor, whether you're a director, playwright, designer, anyone needs to experience as much art as possible. Just like with your connections, you never know when your connection's going to turn out to help you in the future. Same with your inspiration of other art. You can be standing in front of a painting, down at Manil. You can be down at the Manil Art Gallery taking in a beautiful piece of art, and you think, okay, that's interesting. And maybe you forget about it, shortly thereafter after you walk away. And then suddenly you're reading a play or you're watching a play, and all of a sudden that same painting will come right back into your mind, and it'll give you an inspiration that you would not have had if you had not viewed this painting, right? It truly... It's just like use your brain to suck up as much inspiration from the world as you possibly can, because it just sort of saves it to your internal hard drive, and then you can access it again later and use it for many other purposes. So.
Right. Yes. Absorbing art is important, and sometimes it feels like there's so much of it. It seems like an impossible task to absorb art, but clearly it is a valuable thing, and it's important to continue that process. Of course, it's going to be difficult to absorb live theater moving forward in the times that we're living in now. But I remember you speaking about the importance of live theater and how you feel that, in contradiction to popular beliefs, that it's fading out of popularity. You were talking about how it is, in fact, coming into popularity. And I personally believe that it's growing in popularity as a medium. And a lot of people are very excited to get back to work and producing live entertainment once it's more safe.
Exactly.
So would you care to share a little bit of your opinions on that subject?
Yeah. Live entertainment and theater specifically. I can speak from the New York perspective because that's the one I was in the most recently. Broadway. You can compare throughout the decades how many Broadway shows are opening on Broadway, how many of them are running for long periods, how much money they make, and we truly are in right before COVID, we're
Yes.
in an unprecedented time of shows opening, new shows, new musicals, and the amount of money that they were making was way higher than it had been in the past. So I do think that there is a need for live theater still very much in our culture. And I really, I've made jokes. Theater has survived many plagues in the past. Truly, all the theaters in London were shut down for years during some of the plagues in the Elizabethan era. So, and then they came back no problem. That was like 3-4 years of no theater whatsoever. So I am confident, we have survived many plagues before. We are going to survive this plague as well.
Yes. From my perspective, a lot of people seem to feel a ton of discouragement when considering live theater as a medium in general, let alone an avenue that they themselves could venture into. And nowadays, of course, it seems much more difficult. But looking back on human history, very far back from what I can remember, it has lasted and it will continue to last.
Exactly. And back to the idea about taking in as much art as you possibly can. Same with theater. And as you said, prior to COVID, there were lots of options. There's so much to choose from. And I would really encourage everyone to branch outside of their comfort zone. You might love classic Broadway musicals, but go see that weird experimental, theater show where people are naked hanging from their toenails, over a pit of fire. It's going to be weird. It might even make you uncomfortable, but
it is something new, and it will bring you a new color. It'll add a new color to your mental palette for art.
Exactly.
Right?
The biggest thing that I like to tell my students when trying to take in art is that they have to ask themselves these two questions. What do you see? Or if you're in music, what do you hear? And how does it make you feel? And if you can ask yourself those two questions, sitting in front of a painting, listening to a concert, watching a show, if you can ask yourself those two questions, then you can analyze any kind of art. You don't need an advanced degree. It's just those two questions. And if you can answer those questions, then you have analyzed it and gotten something from the show. So even if it's like the worst piece of garbage you've ever seen in your entire life, you still will get it'll have had an effect on you. And then you can sort of file that away again in your mental hard drive of experiences and knowing, when you want to get one kind of outcome that, you can sort of elicit this kind of strange art in this way.
Right, right. Well, that's awesome. I think that is a very valuable experience.
And I should say that phrase or those two questions, what do you see and how does it make you feel? I learned that in my freshman design class at NYU. So it's
freshman design class.
Yep. So it is one that has literally, taken me throughout my entire career as just an adult going through life, and then also as a theater professional.
So in that way, you would say that formal education sparked that opportunity for you to gain that piece of wisdom.
Oh, 100%. Yes. My college professors and grad school professors, I still, as a teacher myself, I like to think that I channel all of them to a degree. There's like a little piece of all of my teachers in me. I've taken the things that I really liked from their teachings. I threw out the stuff that I didn't like, and I created Emmy.
Very nice. Well, I think you got a lot of great parts together to form one excellent professor, in my humble opinion.
Thank you.
We're putting out another podcast, 2020, Correct. A Satire.
A Satire, exactly.
Which I have listened to the first episode of and very much enjoyed. Are we producing any other podcasts specifically?
No, those are the only ones you know about for now. Maybe another one, but
that one and this one. Excellent. We'll see who dominates the podcasting game. But yes, on YouTube, that's LSC-M, Lone Star College Montgomery Arts, where you can find other podcast episodes and other pieces of art that we're going to be putting out on that platform. You can find us on Instagram, I know. That's at
LSC-M Arts.
Is there an underscore, a dash, or anything in there? LSC-M Arts. Excellent. What else can we plug? This week, we're recording this on September 16th, 2020. And on Friday, September 18th, 2020, we're going to be producing a 24-hour play festival. We're going to have 24 hours to get a bunch of students together, playwrights, directors, and actors, and we're going to be writing shows, casting them, rehearsing them, and producing them 24 hours later online via WebEx?
YouTube.
Oh, via YouTube.
We're live streaming them on YouTube.
Oh, That's awesome.
Yep.
I didn't even expect that.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, YouTube at LSC-M Arts.
Yep.
I know Professor Chase Waits here at Lone Star College Montgomery is going to be producing a musical review, which will be later this season.
In November, yes.
2020. Very excited for that.
And that will also be live streamed via YouTube.
That's awesome. I'm excited to hear that it'll be live streamed on YouTube.
It's a brave new world, man. Ross and Taylor Romero over there have been putting their noggins together for the last few weeks, and Micheal, to try to figure out how this live streaming nonsense works.
Yes, I personally, I have a lot of friends who go to other universities in Texas and outside of Texas that study theater and acting, and I've seen a handful of productions over Zoom, and it is interesting. It is very interesting. But the idea of live streaming it on YouTube sounds very appealing.
Yes, I think it's going to be, I mean, listen, the Zoom performances, they're so much better than nothing.
Well, of course. Well, I can't. That's why I try not to make it out like I have a negative view of it, because of course it is work, and work is important in these times, and so I don't want to knock anybody trying to figure out this new landscape. But I have seen a few plays where an audience member chimes in with a toilet flushing or a door closing every few seconds, and that can be a little uncomfortable.
We had a really great open mic night 2 weeks ago, but just because people's individual Wi-Fis are better than others, someone would be singing a beautiful song, and then we would just get the whirly circle of death for 15 seconds, and then they pop right back in 15 seconds later in their song. So, but it was still really, really fun.
I remember as a high school live theater viewer, a high school age student, I would often think, what would happen if I just ran out onto the stage? Like, that is the magic of live theater, is that at any moment, anybody could just barge in and intrude on the show. And Zoom theater productions make that a reality.
Exactly. So true.
I've had times making sure, double checking, is my mic off, is my camera off? I don't want anyone to see me in the bathroom, but I am watching this from the bathroom.
Exactly.
But it is very interesting. I've listened to some other podcasts. I don't know if I've discussed this, but I'm a bit of a podcast fanatic. And some of the shows that I've listened to, stand-up comedians have shared their experience doing live shows in this time. And it all just sounds, wow. It's really the only way I can describe it.
Yeah.
But work is work, and you have to make do with what you can under the circumstances.
The nice thing about live streaming is that it gives it still a little bit of that, just like you said, that you never know, something crazy might happen during a live performance. And it still gives it that feel versus, actually making a film where you can very carefully craft every moment of it. And individual shots and whatnot.
So you can't just pause. Oh, well, maybe I won't come back to this. Maybe
Right.
I'll stop watching. But if it's being live streamed, then you're like, okay, well, they put effort into this, they produced this, and I'm gonna do my best to be a valuable member of the audience.
Absolutely, from your bathroom.
Or your garage, or your car. Hopefully not while it's moving. Wherever you please. Well, I for one am very excited for all of the digital opportunities that this season is going to bring in terms of Lone Star College Montgomery Arts Department. LSC-M Arts on YouTube and Instagram and other places I may not be aware of.
I think that's it.
Well, we'll work on that. Maybe we'll branch off. We'll get a Twitter going.
Perfect. TikTok.
Yeah. Oh yes. we can all record different segments of TikToks from different locales and edit them all together.
Love it. Michael, get on it.
All right, Michael. That one's just for you, buddy. Emmy had an interesting topic that she wanted to bring up and discuss, which I find will be very valuable to a lot of listeners, especially if you're currently in college or thinking about going and pursuing an education. The financial burdens that can come with that. So Emmy is going to share a bit of her own experience in this particular regard.
So student loans is something that I particularly wanted to chat about because in my conversations with current Lone Star College students who are thinking about, transferring to a four-year school or something, something that comes up a lot for them, obviously, is the cost of their education. Of course, we talked about earlier, getting a theater degree, you're certainly not guaranteed to come out and make a boatload of money.
Right.
So does it make a lot of sense to take out a lot of student loans, take on a lot of student loan debt for a career that it won't necessarily make you a lot of money?
I don't know if I'll be able to pay these off, but
Exactly.
I guess I can go ahead and get them.
And I just wanted to put people's minds at ease about some things. I know when I was going through college, I literally just had a meltdown one day where I was like, well, how am I possibly going to pay these? I don't have any job lined up after school. How am I going to pay these student loan bills once the creditors come a knocking? And there's a lot of repayment options out there that actually make it quite easy to do with no matter what your income is. So there's something called the income-based repayment plan. And that literally you submit, what your typical income is for the year, including if it's $0. If you're not making any money, you just say, I'm making no money. and they base your payments around how much money that you make. So if you make $0, you don't have to pay your student loans.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's called forbearance technically, but it's not a bad thing. Like it's completely fine, and I've been in forbearance several times when I've have had periods where I didn't have jobs, and it's not the end of the world. It doesn't ruin your credit, as long as you talk to the student loan company and tell them what's going on. It's completely fine. So now, I'm married and making decent money as a professor. I have about $80,000 of student loans between my undergrad and my grad school. That's about how much I accumulated. And I'm only paying like $200 a month in my student loan payments. So it's quite manageable. I was thinking it'd be like $1,000 a month,
right?
The bulk of my income and all of that. It really is manageable. The other nice thing too, especially if you're thinking about going into the performing arts or some other form of not-for-profit, is that you can sign up for of course, the current administration's talking about getting rid of this plan, but fingers crossed.
I'm sure they're planning on getting rid of a lot of things, but...
Yep, it's called the Public Service Loan Forgiveness. So if you work for a not-for-profit, such as if you're a teacher or you work for the government, or if you're just, are working for a not-for-profit theater. So Broadway doesn't count because that's for-profit theater. But if you're working at, the alley downtown or any other, not-for-profit theater, that if you, and then make your student loan payments on time, after 10 years, they forgive all of your student loans. So
Wow.
So of my $80,000 of student loans, I'll probably get like $50,000 to $60,000 of it forgiven.
Wow.
So that's pretty significant.
That is very significant. That's awesome. I personally had no idea that programs like this were out there.
It's hard. They don't make it easy.
Well, they don't want you to know.
Correct.
They want you to believe, like my assumption has been, okay, well, if I have student loans, if I'm making $0, then I guess they're just going to take my shoes, they're going to take my clothes, they're just going to take everything I own.
Yeah, no, it's really quite reasonable, and you really can work out a payment plan and all kinds of options that fit best for your life. So right now I'm just paying like the minimum that I possibly can, and with the idea that I've already got 4 years under my belt now towards my 10 years. So in 6 years, I will have all the rest of my loans forgiven.
Wow.
Yep.
That's excellent.
It's an incredible service, an incredible resource that's out there. Again, there's a lot of paperwork that you have to go through, a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. Famously, this program, I think, has like a 98% rejection rate, just because it's not because people are being rejected, for any other reason except for the fact that they didn't do their paperwork correctly.
Right.
So
it's not about whether you qualify or not. It's about, did you submit to the process appropriately?
Exactly. In which most people, because they don't know about it, they don't do it correctly. So, but I'm on track. I, should be part of the 2% that when I apply to get my loans forgiven, that they will be. So, those are I just feel like the cost of education, it has risen astronomically in the last 30 years for a variety of reasons, in higher education in particular. And we can't let that be a stumbling block in our attempts to achieve our dreams.
Yes, exactly. The vast majority of people who I speak to in my age range, whether they're planning to go to school or not, everybody is aware of the financial burden, and it's seen as a great wall of some sort of, well, I guess I can go to school, but because of this, I don't know if I'll ever be anything, because I'm going to have this insane astronomical financial burden once I'm out. And there are a lot of people like myself before I started going to school who thought, well, I'll never go to school because when I do, I'm going to have to take on all these loans and I'm going to have to pay back all this money. And that's just something that I don't want to have to do at the start of my life, basically. All right, excellent. Well, this has been a very interesting venture into a new medium for myself and yourself.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Emmy Levine, for speaking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, and that concludes it for episode 1 of I Love College Pod. I am Nidal Wadi, and enjoy the rest of your week.